In an op-ed from the Washington Examiner, the future of men and marriage is bleak. And I agree. And perhaps there's a bit of a personal bias in why I'm interested in stories like these, but admittedly, I think it is very news relevant to talk about the decline of marriage and men. Men aren't going to school. They're not having relationships like men are. The amount of male virgins is skyrocketing. And you have to wonder why this is, why they're living at home. This is not good for society. Of course, there's the, radical feminists who are laughing about it because they view the world through a lens of patriarchy. But this will be bad for everyone. I'm a firm believer in equality. I believe that everyone should be given the opportunity to succeed. And we can, and that means a lot. That really does. That means providing resources to impoverished communities. Yes, libraries, education, internet. Very, very social democracy of you might say to me. Of course, equality of outcome, on the other hand, is absurd nonsense that means nothing. You can't guarantee outcomes. They'll never be the same. And now we're seeing a problem in equality. Do I see the left coming out to the defense of men? They never do. Sometimes. There are some good people who have called this out, and I appreciate it. But always, it's just negative, patriarchy, etc., etc. And we are headed for a dark future without families. I don't care what your family structure is. I'm not talking about nuclear heteronormative families either. I'm talking about people who can share resources to help raise children and provide a loving family environment. Single parent households don't do as well as, dual parent. And again, I'm not talking about straight couples. This is I was reading about this. It's really interesting. They don't know yet. Okay, the studies are still ongoing. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. My understanding was that we know that fatherless households, the kids who grow up without fathers, tend to do really bad, more likely to do drugs, more likely to go to jail. But they haven't been able to determine necessarily if same-sex couples would be better or worse. So for the time being, it is presumed, and this is coming from intellectual dark web types, that two parents is still a major benefit. And so I bring this up to point out families matter. Families are important for children. And more importantly, millennials ain't having kids. It's not even that they're not getting married. And I'm look who's talking, 33, single, no kids. My dad had 2 kids by the time he was 27. Well, let's read what they have to say about the future of men and marriage. The Washington Examiner says, with Father's Day upon us, the time has come to address as a nation what Heather McDonald noted earlier this year is the greatest social catastrophe of our time, fatherlessness. Fatherlessness is the #1 cause of nearly all social ills we face. We can't afford to ignore it any longer. To be clear, father absence is the more accurate term, since fatherlessness implies that men have become deadbeat dads. Nothing could be further from the truth. Sure, this faction exists, as do deadbeat moms. But the 2 most significant threats to a father's presence in the home are divorce and out-of-wedlock births. It's the breakdown of marriage, in other words, or the collapse of the family that results in father-absent homes. Whether you feel its pain directly or not, it affects you. Families are the building blocks of civilization, writes Genevieve Wood at the Daily Signal. They are personal relationships, but they greatly shape and serve the public good. Family breakdown harms society as a whole. Indeed it does. And how exactly did the family fall apart? When we stopped valuing men and marriage. Excuse me. There was a time, believe it or not, when marriage was highly valued. Ergo, the majority of Americans married. They even looked forward to it. It was an honorable mark of adulthood to leave one's family of origin and build a family of one's own. You ever played the game of life? I believe it's by Milton Bradley. It's the game where you live a life and you have kids. I do not believe there is a game of life where you can choose a single childless option. For real. But think about what that means. When the game was developed, to them, a normal course of life was college, no college, and getting married and having kids. Today, people aren't doing it. They're not having kids. I will also point out, one of the funny things about life is that there was never any obstruction of same-sex coupling. In fact, many times growing up playing life, people would be like, you have a pink and blue little character and you can put pink and blue whatever you want in the car, which means when you got married, you could have put 2 men and 2 women. Isn't that amazing? That even in the game of life, the possibility of same-sex marriage existed, but there was no possibility of single childlessness. At least I'm pretty sure that's the case, right? I could be wrong, but I played Life not too long ago. I'm pretty sure you get married and have kids. But let's read on. Then came feminism, and with it, noted Dennis Prager in his Fireside Chat on Marriage and Children versus Career, the notion that a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. This mantra was glamorized, though not coined, by Gloria Steinem in the 1970s, and was quickly inculcated both in Prager's generation and those who followed. Prager rightly defines America's new narrative, which is directed specifically to women. You don't need a man, you need a career, then you'll be happy. I don't entirely agree with a lot of the ideas put forth through Prager University in terms of, family and marriage. I do, however, completely agree that the new narrative we see from the left specifically targets women. Now, there are issues, and it targets women positively and men negatively, in the sense that they tell women, you can do this, go do this. They want women to be more masculine and men to be less masculine. And it's very, very weird. They say the most masculine traits are toxic. They really do. I understand that some people point out legitimate toxic masculinity, like hazing kind of situations. Women haze too, but you get the point I'm trying to make. There are some aspects of male behavior that are bad. We all get it. And the honest, good faith actors will point to that as toxic masculinity. There absolutely is toxic femininity. How you define it, well, a lot of people have different definitions. One that I've heard is that, toxic masculinity is arrogance and aggressive and assertive behavior to the point where you cause harm to others for self-gain. And toxic femininity is feigning the victim in order to make gains from those who seek to help, right? But a lot of people have different definitions. The point is, what women are being encouraged to do for the most part, at least in my life growing up, is to be more like men. Think about like any movie. Captain Marvel, for instance. They made a movie where it was good, it was better, it was finally that a woman was becoming a warrior and causing damage to their enemies and saving lives. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, but I'm pointing out that the traditional gender roles were that women raised families and and men went off and risked their lives and saved lives and hunted and things like that. So and that's literally why we're at the point where we are. Captain Marvel is a woman in a more masculine role. I'm not saying she shouldn't be. That's not the point. The point I'm making is, where is the movie where the man is in the motherly role, and the whole movie is about raising a good family? I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm making a point about what the big blockbuster is and what people really, really want when it comes to social justice. The left says women should be CEOs, but we don't see the same level of activism in the press or otherwise of them saying men should be stay-at-home dads. It does exist, but it's disproportionate. Almost all of the feminism is about breaking the glass ceiling. What about men breaking the, wooden cabin? I don't know what you'd call it. But for men, there are a lot of guys who would love to be stay-at-home dads and raise their kids, teach them, how to be successful or whatever. And society typically wants men at work and women at home. And that's the controversial stereotype. What do we have now? Men at work, women at work. So who's in the home? Nobody. For real. It still is disproportionately women, for sure. I'm not saying that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we can't have a society that only prioritizes one aspect of life or acts like there aren't two parental roles. Whether or not you think women should be doing the motherly role or the feminine and the masculine is not the point. The point is we have two parents. One looks after kids, one goes and works. Today, it's just both parents working and then hiring a caretaker. Go to LA. It's crazy. So this is, in my opinion, the big problem of what we see from, regressive left-wing activism is that it's not fighting for equality. It really isn't. It's fighting to diminish one gender role and inflate another gender role in a certain degree, right? I'll put it this way. Men are criticized for being toxic. They say, tone it down. Men should be more in touch with their feminine side. Yes, okay. But that still leaves, let's put it this way. If there's a scale from -10 to +10, and -10 is feminine, +10 is masculine, they're telling men to tone it down to a 5, and women to tone it up to a 5. You see what I mean? Like, just no femininity at all. There's been numerous TV shows, like Family Guy and Simpsons have commented on this, where, like Lois Griffin or Marge Simpson are criticized by feminists for being housewives, and they say that's their choice. And it should be. In my world, growing up and believing in true equality and liberty for all, men and women have a choice as to what they truly want to do. But today, I kid you not, I speak with a ton of women who tell me they don't want careers. And I'm not saying everyone, most women I know, the overwhelming majority want careers. I'm saying there are women who want to be moms who can't because they feel pressured by society. To me, that kind of sucks. And I think what we should do to protect the family and to help improve society, reduce crime, all of these things, is encourage the family and encourage people to take the path they want. If you want to be at home with the kids, whether you're a man or a woman, you have that choice. We need more of that side of the argument and less, all we ever hear is, I want to work at the top of the office and make $1 billion. Okay, great. Even within that argument, there's no one arguing that women should be, cleaning sewers and being garbage women. It's always about the big, cushy, air-conditioned office jobs. And that's fine. I'm not saying just because you prioritize one thing doesn't mean you ignore the other. But I think there's an imbalance in the argument, and this is not going to result in equality. So I know I went on a rant about family stuff. We'll just wrap up with their final thoughts. They say, it has been 50 years since feminists first began to make the claim that women don't need men. And by every statistical measure, we are worse off because of it. How much longer are we willing to stay silent? Well, my opinion is less that it's about men and more about parents and dedicated child rearing. So it may be that I'm wrong, and the studies will prove that fathers and mothers do provide a very specific benefit. That's fine. I was reading some, I can't remember exactly who, some of the intellectual dark web types talking about we don't actually know if there's a difference between two parents and a male and a female parent, right? If it matters. But I'll read into it, and if you guys know better than I do, feel free to comment and set the record straight. I'm not a scientist in that, in this regard. I'm not an expert. Just some thoughts I have in my personal opinions. But I think we can all agree that families are important and that the current narrative we see from the left does nothing to balance out what families really need. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. on this channel. For those on the podcast, 6:30 p.m.-ish. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time.